This is DibTech Talk, a show where we make sense of all things cybersecurity for the defense industrial base. Are you a hacker that wants to wield your powers for good? Do you wish you could serve your country and defend the nation from the comfort of your couch? Then join the Department of Defense's Vulnerability Disclosure Program. That's right. You can become part of a world-class team that helps identify vulnerabilities on DOD infrastructure. The Vulnerability Disclosure Program provides an open channel and legal safe harbor for those that discover vulnerabilities when they report them to DOD. Join a community of researchers who have discovered more than 25,000 vulnerabilities since the program's inception in 2016. Stay tuned to find out how you can join the ethical hacking team at the DOD Cybercrime Center.
My name is Kristopher Johnson. I am the director of the Department of Defense Vulnerability Disclosure Program, or VDP. We work out of the DOD Cybercrime Center, DC3 in Ithaca, Maryland. Obviously, pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for the invite. A little bit about myself and then about DC3. So I joined the military right out of high school and spent 6 years flying on the Airborne Warning and Control System, AWACS aircraft for the Air Force. Got out and I spent a significant period of time in between then and now as in both the private sector and as a civilian in the Army and the Air Force. My background is network engineering and program management and now cybersecurity. So obviously what really got me here today is the OPM hacks and how I was affected, and I wanted to be part of a solution rather than just being a victim. So for DC3, we've been in cyber since before cyber was sexy, since 1998, before cyber was even a thing. It was conceptual. Our whole starting position was digital and multimedia forensics. So you're thinking of a forensics laboratory. They're bringing in the hard drives and the cell phones and the IoT devices, and we support basically law enforcement and counterintelligence. That's the root of DC3 of how we grew. Since then, we've had a tremendous addition to the DC3 portfolio, from cyber training to a technology solutions development. Think of R&D on these type of tools that we use for the laboratory. We do cyber analytics, and then the DIB mission is obviously key, which you'll hear about in a little bit with Ms. Covey. And then the latest addition is the Vulnerability Disclosure Program, VDP. So VDP itself, a little background. So we were tagged by the Secretary of Defense in 2016 to lead this mission. We ourselves were started out of a initiative which you're probably familiar with, Hack the Pentagon. So that program itself was launched by the Defense Digital Service, DDS, in spring of 2016. At the end of that, the Secretary of Defense at the time got with all of the leadership and said, hey, that is a great program. What are we doing for the other 320 days out of the year, right? It was a snapshot in time, 45 days. They found about 140 vulnerabilities on a very small subset of systems. So they partnered with the Department of Justice to develop what was the first ever in federal government vulnerability disclosure policy.
So what exactly is the Vulnerability Disclosure Program? How does it work? Like, what's the goal of it? Like, it's founded in the Hack the Pentagon I guess, activities. So what is it? Like, what's the end state? And then we'll break it down into its pieces.
Yeah, I wish there was an end state. I'd love to work myself out of a job. Unfortunately, where we're at today, and as you see in the news, cyber is a ever-evolving, it's an ever-evolving profession. So I don't think our job is ever quite done. That's pretty easily seen just based on the amount of vulnerabilities that we've processed to date. However, our end state is obviously cybersecurity and defense of our nation. So our whole mission is to work with the ethical hacking community to discover and report the vulnerabilities that they find on our attack surface, our public-facing assets, and then we work with those system owners inside of the Department of Defense to mitigate. We are a left of boom program. We are a left of exploitation, left of attack. If you think about it, we're preventive maintenance. We're trying to find things before things break. And that's always hopefully the goal. What I can tell you is, and anyone who's been in the cyber game for long enough, or even network defense, it's a very emotional event when you are actually attacked or when you're actually exploited, and the incident response is a significant effort, both in time, money, and resources. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve, and it was preventing those vulnerabilities from existing. So as those adversaries, as the bad guys and bad girls go and they scan our stuff, we've already fixed it before they had a chance to get there.
So you use this term, and I want to make sure that we define it, just so we don't leave anybody out of the conversation. What exactly is an ethical hacker?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you think of hacking, obviously, that term was birthed in the 80s out of IBM. It became part of pop culture in the 80s and 90s with movies like War Games and Hackers, Swordfish, and so on. And we have traditionally always seen hackers as the bad guys, right? We've always seen hackers as those that wish to do harm, or they have malicious intent. And that's where it's all defined, is the intent. The difference between a white hat hacker and a black hat hacker is simple. The white hat have chosen a profession and an ethos to do no harm, right? Whereas the black hat, obviously, they're the opposite. They use the same tools and techniques and tactics and protocols and proof of concepts to do their mission. It's just, what do they do with those vulnerabilities? Do they take them and use them? Do they sell them? Or are they actually trying to improve the organization to which they are supporting? We participate in a program called HackerOne. They're our public-facing side of the program. They themselves are a great recruiting firm to bring in and entice those researchers to our front door, and then we let them kind of go wild as long as they're covered and stay within our rules of engagement or our policy.
Yeah, and I was going to bring up, you call them researchers because they are going out and doing all sorts of researching and discovering. So how does one become a researcher for this vulnerabilities disclosure program?
Well, I think, really when you look at the fundamental piece of a researcher, it starts off with just a thirst for knowledge, right? So I think at the individual level, somebody who wants to, who one wants to learn about cyber, and two, they have a different approach to life, right? They look at something and they want to disassemble and take it apart, which is very different from, say, a network or cyber defender who's looking at patching and fixing. One wants to take apart and find out how to get in, and one wants to put together with super glue, baling twine, and some duct tape to keep these systems up and secure. So it's a different approach. For the DOD VDP, it's very simple. So we have a website. It's HackerOne/Department of Defense, or DEPT of Defense, and they're able to go on there and read the policy. Our policy was intentionally written to have as little legalese as possible, because what we know is that there are researchers around the world. We have over, I think, 2,500 researchers across 45 countries that participate in the program. And by the way, not all of them are English as a first language. Actually, probably a majority aren't. So you go to the policy, you can read through obviously the scope. So what is in scope today? Really happy, obviously, that we announced a few weeks ago that our scope is expanded. So we are one of the first VDPs ever, certainly in the federal government, to open up our scope to all public-facing or publicly accessible information systems, meaning it's a see something, say something. So these researchers, hopefully they've already kind of cut their teeth on the tools, and programming is a really important thing, learning C++ and Python, coming in with a programming language background. We all can typically speak that language, right? And then obviously the tools, your Metasploit and your Burp Suite. So they come to our front door, they read our policy, and once again, we're the largest in the world, so we have the most, we'll say we have the biggest sandboxes they can go play in, right? And that's really important for especially a lot of new researchers who may not have the, we'll say, the skills honed as well as maybe an elite hacker, those that are making millions of dollars every year. This is a good training grounds for them, so they can come in, easily use the tools that are readily available and free online, and then start their research.
Yeah, so are there any hard and fast qualifications that these people must have or need to have? Are you screening them for any sort of qualification, or is it, you can join if you say you have these skills and you can test your skills, or are you guys vetting these people in some way?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a question that I get literally every week from every person I talk to. Well, what are you doing? Are you doing background checks? Are you research? How do you know that they're the good guys? And this is my answer, and this is the answer I give every time. I don't care. I truly don't care of their background. I don't care of anything. We have a policy, and they must follow the policy. It's very simple. There's 3 phases to every point of research. It's the discover, the test, and the report. So if you're discovering vulnerabilities and you're testing them and you're reporting them, and once again, there's more there, but that's the basically the sum of it all. We don't really care. So tomorrow you can have your dog sign up for a HackerOne account and start their research from their dog house in the backyard, because I'm sure you have great Wi-Fi, and they can submit reports. We're completely, we have an open front door. Anyone who wants to do research and submit reports, then we will receive them and process.
So what happens if somebody who's not part of this program starts doing their own research outside of the policy before they've, gotten accounts and gone through this? Can they come to you with a vulnerability outside the program in some way, and then get into the program and become covered?
So we have had instances of that, right, to where they don't even know that the VDP exists. They're just in their everyday research, they stumble upon something, and then they go and they want to report. Then they do a little more research to find out that, oh yeah, we actually do have a VDP. So for the most part, yeah, we absolutely take those, right? Somebody found them on accident. We've had people find websites that we didn't even know was actually on the wire, that were live out there, and they came and reported it to different agencies within the federal government, and they finally directed them to us, and we worked with them to fix. So once again, we're that open front door. If it is a see something, say something, and as long as you have a position that you wish to do no harm, we will deal in good faith and provide what's the most important tenet of a VDP, which is we'll say I forget the term, legal safe harbor. So we give legal safe harbor from the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the CFAA. So that's really important, so that they know that they can come and they can participate, and no one's going to go kick down their doors for doing something that's good.
Okay, so you said the first part is discovering the vulnerability, and the second part is testing. What is on the researcher for testing, and what's on DC3 for the testing aspect of it?
Sure. So when they do their testing, they can use whatever tools that they have available. Part of the policy is that they must stop at the front door. So they can come up to our front door and they can test it. The moment that door swings open, they have to close it and then report it to us, right? It's very simple. It is very standard across. If you were to move further than that, one, you'd violate the policy, and two, that would be considered a penetration test because you're entering into a protected space, right? So we obviously don't allow that. That wouldn't be very good. would probably violate law and Homeland Security presidential directives and all kinds of good stuff. So it's very simple. They find it, and then they report. The report is the most important thing because it gives us a proof of concept, or a POC. That proof of concept is basically the step-by-step directions with not only what they did, the tools that they used, and how they found it. They submit that to us, and then we go and we do a manual validation of every single vulnerability that's submitted. To date, we just actually, on Monday around 7 o'clock in the morning, we surpassed 30,000 vulnerabilities. 21,000 of those were valid. So every one of those 21,000, we run through that proof of concept twice. Once in the beginning, when the researcher first tells us about it, we validate, because we're not going to send anything to the system owners to mitigate, that we haven't actually validated that it's real. They have an opportunity to fix, and then we do, and this is probably the least known piece of our program, we do a mitigation assessment at the end, which means that we run through that proof of concept all over again to ensure that they actually fixed it. And we have a varying success rate on that, but it's for the most part, it's around 25 to 30% of the first time that there are challenges with their mitigation. So we have to work with the system owner and provide more of an exquisite service to help them through that. So hopefully that's a good rundown of our process.
Yeah, so you say that these researchers are from 45 different countries. Why is it not a vulnerability on its face that these are foreign actors, not state-sponsored, obviously, but these are foreign individuals from around the world coming from the intelligence community? This would freak out most people. So why is it okay, and why do you not care that they are from all these different countries?
Once again, it's the white hat researcher community has no geographic boundaries, right? Just because somebody is within the United States, proper, doesn't mean that they're also, good people with good intent. It's all based on the intent of the researcher. For the most part, the researchers come to us for a few different reasons, right? Obviously, they're cutting their teeth at security research, so we're the biggest game in town with the biggest sandbox. They can come play and they can start to learn the craft of what is security research. And so that's one thing. Two is we use every opportunity that we can to elevate their visibility, because we want these researchers to get better, to improve, and then eventually to move off to other paid programs. It is becoming an industry in of itself that, and as you can see through the various lists of Fortune 500 companies, it's becoming every year a more and more popular thing. And obviously we have a ton of new legislation that's been passed through OMB memorandums, and even the IoT Cybersecurity Improvement Act of 2020 has a component of VDP where NIST is creating a standard, and also it's going to be a mandatory thing for anyone providing a service to the federal government. So VDPs are a thing. And as they become more and more prevalent, once again in the private and the public sector, you're going to see more and more researchers jumping from program to program to discover. So our whole goal is to invite, and as long as you're operating within our policy, we're thankful for the reports that we receive.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, what do these researchers get out of it? Like, they get to practice, but do they get some sort of street cred or any recognition for being excellent researchers?
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's honestly, when we think about it, one is to process the reports, but the other really important piece of our mission is to ensure that the researchers are getting visibility, right? That they are being recognized. So we have a few different ways of doing that. The first one is we have a leaderboard. Think of it as your Xbox Live, so where the researchers who are very active and they're finding and discovering and we're fixing these vulnerabilities, they get points for every report that they submit. If you submit enough reports, you get bumped up into the leaderboard, and the top 10 has pictures, and you can obviously add in your Twitter, and it becomes like a thing, like you said, street cred, right? It definitely grows their resume. The second thing we do is every month we award a Researcher of the Month for VDP. So, and it's not a quantity, it's a quality. So they could have just one report, but it could be so heavy hitting that we give them that award. And I'll be honest, I've been really I'm surprised at how well that has worked at getting the researchers identified. Just a few weeks ago, there was a researcher out of Vietnam who was awarded our Researcher of the Month, and they had like 15 news articles written about them in Vietnam. A really tremendous researcher. And then we also do a Researcher of the Year. So we've only been doing this for 2 years. That Researcher of the Year is we basically total out everything that they submitted over the course of that calendar year. And they get recognized, they get added into our annual report that we produce, and then they get a box of swag, including hoodies and stickers and coins and customized dog tags. So there is some benefit. But all of that being said, I will say that the feedback that I've received from the researchers themselves, the biggest drawing factor to participating in the DOD VDP is the mission. It is the mission to defend a nation. I've had many researchers come up and tell me about, hi, I want to join the military, I want to join the Army, the Air Force, I had an issue, I had to drop out, I couldn't do it, had family issues, couldn't meet education requirements, whatever their reason was. But they said, I feel like I'm actually part of something larger. I'm part of something bigger. I'm part of a mission that I can get behind, one that I wanted to support, but as an active duty person, but now I can do it as a civilian from the comfort of my own home, doing something that they need. When we need security research, we need folks to help secure our boundaries.
So is it okay for these researchers, maybe they're not on the top 10 and they're not going to make the leaderboard, but if this is something that they do for fun on a regular basis and they want to put this on a resume as, like if they're applying to college and they're like, hey, I do this for fun, is it acceptable for them to put this on their resume?
I don't see a reason why not. We've had our students go off to Stanford. We've had them use VDP. I've seen on resumes, digital resumes, and even paper resumes too. If they're highlighted for Researcher of the Month or certainly of the year, that's something to put into your kit bag, and it's gonna elevate, I'd say your position. Obviously, it's a top 10. We have, over 2,500 researchers that participate, so not everyone's going to hit the top 10, but that shouldn't be a discriminating factor because, once again, we're not looking at quantity. We look at quality of what's submitted. So, for sure, I mean, I would empower people to use that, come in to the program, perform their research, and then elevate themselves through their good work. So they're not just a lot of government programs, admittedly, coming from a government guy, it's you submit things into a black hole and then they disappear and you have no idea where they go. One of the benefits of our program is we're obviously always engaged with the researchers. We communicate with them regularly, not just at the initial onset of the report, but throughout the mitigation process. And at the end, if they wish to take that report that they submitted and they want to use it in a blog post or a tweet or an article, or by the way, we've also had people teach college courses based on their vulnerabilities that they've discovered. You can ask us for that. So you request disclosure. We'll go through and redact information that isn't necessarily important to the researcher community. They're mainly concerned about the proof of concept of how they were able to do it, not so much if this was on Army.mil or Airforce.mil. So we do some redaction. And then if you go and actually do the papers or the tweets, we will put you on blast for sure, because we want to, once again, we want to be able to rise the entire tide of all researchers in the VDP Bay.
So I have at least two questions related to this, and so I don't want to forget either one. So if I don't ask you a second question, remind me and I'll come back and ask the second one. One, is there, what are the punishments for violating the policies? Do you give warning shots? Like, let's say they maybe crossed the line and they didn't, you think they legitimately didn't mean to cross it? Because I feel like there might be some people out there who are like, ooh, this is cool, but what are the penalties for inadvertently violating policy? And then what are the punishments for advertently violating the policies?
So for the former, those who may accidentally take a step over, it's a case-by-case basis. It truly is. Once again, we deal in good faith with the researchers. We would end up having a conversation. This has happened a few times where a researcher who may have not have understood what the effects were from their research had an adverse impact on that system that they were performing their activities on. It's a case-by-case basis. There's nothing blanket. I'll say that we always deal in good faith. We will discuss one with the affecting agency and the researchers themselves and figure out what happened. And sometimes there's just a reasonable explanation for it, and then we can kind of chalk up to that. And maybe other times it won't be. Once again, we've had, very happy to say, over 4.5 years, 30,000 vulnerabilities submitted, 21,000 valid, and we haven't had a single bad incident. So we'll talk about your latter question. So those who wish to do harm, I'll just say that I'm not an attorney, although I did sleep in a Holiday Inn Express last night. As far as those bad actors, there's a thing called the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and we have criminal and civil penalties for that. Once again, it's not really my game. I'm just a knuckle dragging cyber guy, but that is always a course of action for those who come in and do harm under the program. It's really important that our program stays as pristine as possible. One, for the researchers, so that they know that when they participate, that they will be protected, and we will deal always within good faith with them. And then for anyone that wishes to do malicious intent or has malicious intent or actions underneath the VDP umbrella, we'll just know it's probably not going to be a good day.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that you've had, 0 incidences of, people with malicious intent. So I kind of want to take a step backwards and talk about what the targets are. So we kind of glossed over public facing government targets, but what does that mean exactly? Can you break it down Barney style for people like me, or so these, people out there who want to get started? Does this mean public facing websites, or are these like applications? What are the boundaries of this program?
So from November 21st, 2016 until January 28th, 2021, our policy was always public-facing websites. That was the policy throughout that span. So for the majority of our program, that's where it's been. However, in January, we received approval from the Secretary of Defense to expand our scope. So now our scope is, and this is the quote, legal term, publicly accessible DOD information systems. And what the heck does that mean? So very simply put, anything. So if it's anything. If you're able to find it from a privately owned or a publicly owned IP address, if you can see something, then you should tell us about it. That includes networking and boundary devices, security appliances, applications, IoT, ICS, SCADA, you name it, frequency-based communications. If they're able to see it, report it. I will tell you that we have had times throughout our program where researchers have come to us with these things that aren't considered websites, and we fixed them, but we couldn't provide them with the legal safe harbor. So we had to push them off and say, thank you for submitting. Please don't do that again. It's not part of our policy. But now those training wheels are off. We're able to accept anything. So all the researchers who had hesitations in the past about submitting a report to us because it wasn't covered under our scope, well, guess what? Giddy up. It's all in scope. So you can submit it if you can find it. We do, obviously, record and maintain a database of all the vulnerabilities that were discovered, so we can do trend analysis and data analytics on the back end to see those most vulnerable agencies or systems. We've had some really tremendous successes with specific vulnerabilities in the past, CVE-based vulnerabilities. Not everything that we get is CVE-based, by the way. Actually, only 20% of what we've processed is CVE-based, meaning that it's a very specific vulnerability to a very specific operating system or application. 80% of what we receive is actually CWE-based, so they're generalized weaknesses. Could be default username and password, or just information exposure, if you will. So we do keep a catalog of the technologies and the vulnerabilities that we've discovered, and we do the trend analysis on our back end to then hopefully feed the enterprise. So we directly support the Department of Defense Information Network. It's a Joint Force Headquarters, but it's DOD. So DOD owns the networks, and we feed to them. However, on April 5th of this year, we launched a VDP for the defense industrial base. So it's a 12-month pilot that companies can then sign up and receive this free service that we've been providing to the DOD for 4.5 years.
So how does that work?
Very simply, all they got to do is sign up. It is a free service. So if you go to dc3.mil and go to the VDP section of that, there is the application. Companies can then sign up for this. We will walk them through the process. There's a term of services that they'll have to sign, and then they select the assets that they wish to put in scope of the VDP pilot, and then we manage everything from there. So we have a unified communications platform, which is a combination of Slack and Jira that they're able to talk to us and communicate with us. We work with the researchers on each vulnerability and do the same service that we do for the DoD, but for the DIB. So it's as simple as just signing up.
So how do researchers know that these specific companies now fall within fair game and scope of the program?
Yeah, it's super easy. So we have basically a CSV file on that HackerOne page, and we put whatever assets that the companies want in scope in there. They can then auto-load these into their software programs to then start to perform their research. It's as easy as it could be. There's no need to research the companies or what assets are in scope or out of scope. One interesting, so granted we've only been running this for about a month, but we've also seen vulnerability trends in the DIB now that we have seen in the DoD, and we are about 390 vulnerabilities in. We started with 14 companies. We added a few since then, and then we plan to add more companies every month. So it wasn't just a starting point. We will have basically iterations of additional companies every month to continue to increase the impact of the pilot.
So do you still accept researchers who may not be in the program, or researchers who are in the program but finding vulnerabilities on DIB companies that are not part of the program? If they came to you and said, hey, we found these vulnerabilities, would you welcome those in and maybe help out that DIB company even though they're not part of the program?
Yeah, then we start to get into the legalese of the program, and once again, I don't want to I don't feel comfortable speaking on the legal side. I will just say that we would probably direct them to the company itself, and if they have a security inbox that they can receive these. If the company does not have a VDP, so I always say this, if the company does not have a VDP, if they are not open to your research, then you're not allowed to do research on their assets. And the government can't, on behalf of the company, accept the risk of what happens during the research. So we can't do that. I would also recommend that the companies call us and get signed up for the pilot and get in there. And once again, it's a free service that we provide. We're going to go for at least a year. And we've already had some really great successes. Once again, those almost 300 to 400 vulnerabilities, I think we're at 386. Those are all vulnerabilities that were discovered and non-exploited. So it was pre-exploitation. Those companies' assets are now stronger. Their cyber hygiene is improved, and all they had to do was sign a piece of paper and get in. There's no, we have no interest in it except to help these small companies that don't have that capability.
So is there a cap on the number of companies that can participate?
The cap is on how many companies we can support. We haven't seen that cap yet. Once again, we started with 14. We've added a few. We have about 30 that are potentials to enter in the program. We'll basically kind of guide it from there, and we will continue to add companies to the pilot until we can no longer handle the volume, and then we'll probably put a cap on it. But I don't see that happening, to be honest.
So are there any requirements for the companies themselves for them to be accepted into the program? Like, do they have to be a certain size? Do they have to be between a certain size? Do they have to have certain assets on their infrastructure? Like, what are the requirements for these DIB companies that want to apply?
Yeah, there's no size requirement. Honestly, we prefer some of the smaller to mediums, but that's not saying that we wouldn't, that we wouldn't gladly accept a large. For us, obviously, the biggest thing is they must own the assets, right? So if you are primarily using a third-party provided solution, like we can't do research on like Microsoft 365 cloud, right? I mean, that's Microsoft owned. So any of these as a services, it's probably not going to happen. The cloud starts to get a little fuzzy, especially depending on what kind of cloud solution that you're using, whether it's storage or computing. We just ask that at least start the conversation. So what we do is we walk every company through their asset list of what they want in scope and out of scope, and then we do the help with them to let them know that this is probably something that you can put in scope. This isn't something you can put in scope. We've also had a company where a researcher accidentally discovered a vulnerability on a system that wasn't in scope, and we worked with the company to add that system in because there were some vulnerabilities that needed to be discovered and fixed. So, once again, it just come to us. We'll have that conversation. We'll get you in the pilot, and we hope to help out as many companies as we can.
So do you see this being a scalable solution? And I don't want to talk about CMMC, but with CMMC in theory coming online in the next few years, these small to medium tier companies and some of the micro-sized companies are finding achieving CMMC level 3 compliance really expensive. But I wonder if DOD can offer some of these services, if these DIB companies could opt into them to negate maybe the requirements for some of the CMMC. Is this a scalable option, or is this going to be like a niche offering?
So I mean, it's obviously a pilot, right? So I don't have like a funding line that this thing is going to be a program of record yet. We're really once again, we're barely 30 days into it, just looking at what we're receiving and the amount of companies that we can support. And if this is a feasible program moving forward, then we'll go work with OSD to include it. Is there a potential for VDPs to become part of CMMC or to become part of the RMF, the risk management framework, or a NIST standard for VDPs as a requirement? Potentially. I mean, it's starting to go. I would say starting to go that way. However, at this point in time, VDP doesn't preclude pieces of CMMC or a replacement thereof. We're simply just a free offering. If at all, if the companies are interested in, once again, improving their cyber hygiene and having a different approach to it, the DOD has done it. We've done it for 4.5 years, and we've been very successful at it. And we'd like to help those companies achieve what we've achieved.
Yeah, so speaking of helping companies, I know you said that you guys develop trends and conduct analysis on the vulnerabilities that you're seeing. How do you report these to the DIB in any way? Do you report them to these companies that are participating? How widespread is this reporting and analysis once you guys have conducted all of it?
Yeah, good question. So obviously on the DoD side, right, so we do a monthly roll-up called the Bug Bites, which we post on Twitter and our website. We do an annual report that rolls up all of the big hitting stories that we saw throughout the calendar year, and that's publicly available as well. We are producing one for the DIB, so based on these, once again, this first set of 400 vulnerabilities, we're going to produce a report there as well, and then we're going to share it out. We strip all the names of the companies. It's very much like when we disclose a report for the researchers, we basically anonymize all of the data because most people don't care which company it came from. They want to see where it hurts, right? They want to see the touch points and where they could potentially get better and things that they could do, some best business practices. As I said before, 80% of what we get are CWE based, so it's basically it's either a lack of knowledge or there are issues with how we've deployed the system. So that's really important. So having those researchers there to scan and discover and report is important, and then we will produce those analytics to, once again, we're because DC3 is a federal cyber center, we're one of 7. One of our mainstays, one of our goals is data sharing. It's information sharing to improve everyone, right, across the federal government, and obviously with the defense industrial base, the supply chain to the DOD. So that's our intent.
So is there an email that people can sign up for to receive these types of alerts, or is it something that they have to go and look for themselves?
So the report itself, we're going to put out, and so if you follow us on Twitter, that's DC3VDP. The reports themselves will be put out on Twitter and hosted on the website. We haven't quite discussed if we want to provide a deeper set of analytics to the companies that participate. Certainly right now, once again, it's a pilot. We're 30 days in. We're just trying to figure out, we're trying to get our sea legs, if you will, and trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work, and figure out, once again, what could be most successful for the companies. So there may be an opportunity there. If you wish to sign up, obviously you can go to dc3.mil and get the email address and pull all of the information. That's where I would just suggest that all the companies go, dc3.mil. We have the welcome videos in there, so the Industry Day video, so they'll be able to see all the background of what we've talked about before. They get to watch me talk for about 2 hours, which is just brilliant. But you get all of the forms, everything's there, email, and some FAQs.
That's amazing. This is an amazing resource to DIB companies. I hope you don't have a stampede of 300,000 companies knocking on your door.
Well, we built it, so we're hoping that they come, and we want the stampede. We want there to be an overall interest. Once again, it's a free service. They just sign up for it. We provide it. It's a white glove service, and it's turnkey. So all they have to do is throw their stuff in scope, and we tell them what needs to get fixed. Very simple.
So, do you have any indication how long this pilot program is going to last?
Well, it's certainly 12 months. I think that we'll have to do an evaluation once we get closer. We have a great partnership with Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, SEI. Plan is potentially to do a post-mortem study of the data and what we've received to come up with a more of a data-driven, a smart approach to do we end the pilot? Do we extend the pilot? Do we then advocate at OSD, at the Pentagon, for the funding line to make this a program of record, even on the legislative side? So there's a lot of potentials there. What I can tell you is we're going to run this thing for 12 months. We're going to run it as good as we can, get as many companies in there as we can, and try to elevate at least, once again, for 12 months, the cyber hygiene and the defense of those companies. Anything that we can do to help is obviously our goal.
Well, and hopefully you guys are working with OSD and DOD CIO and ANS to help update, some cybersecurity standards for the DIB based on the actual vulnerabilities that are being discovered. So hopefully it's not just in this silo of, providing this benefit. Hopefully you're educating the rest of DOD on what you guys are finding, because I imagine the insights are going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, so we have wonderful partnerships with all of those agencies, to include the Defense Digital Service. There is great interest in the pilot. Obviously, as you see, and Ms. Covey will talk to you about in a little bit, there's a great opportunity there to help the defense industrial base. So all eyes are on the pilot to see if it is successful, and we hope it is, and we believe it is. Once again, 30 days of data shows that there's a potential need. Right now, our challenge truly, and this sounds weird, you think, okay, well, the government's giving a free service, it costs nothing. The challenge has been getting companies to fully sign up. Everyone shows up to the party, but no one is the majority of them are not walking through the front door. So getting them in, signing the terms of service, which are pretty open. I mean, down to the point to where we cannot share data with other governmental agencies. And that's it. I mean, they just have to do that, put some assets in scope, and then we're off to the races. So that's.
What do you think the hesitancy is with them getting all the way through the door?
I think that this is new, right? I mean, this is a new type of initiative that the last I checked, only 10 to 12% of all Fortune 500 companies are actually using. So this is new. I think that there may be a hesitancy to go into and allowing. Once again, we started off with the conversation about the pop culture and the bad guys, and do you want to play a game, and they don't want people to play a game on their stuff. They're trying to do work and produce a product. So there may be some hesitancy there. But just know, once again, if the DOD can do it, I hope that hopefully settles some hesitancy, and then we're here and available to talk through any issues or challenges or questions that there may be out there. We just want the companies to take full advantage of something that is a free service that's going to step up their game, whether they like it or not. It steps up our game, and I can guarantee it's going to do the same for them.
Do you think there's any hesitancy that this is a little bit Big Brother-ish, that potentially they are opening themselves up for being discovered for not being fully in compliance with something, is there any retribution from the DOD if vulnerabilities are discovered through this program?
There's no hammer behind the program. It is simply once again a good faith program to give them a service that they may not be able to afford today. There's no hammer. There's nothing negative that can come out of it. And actually, in the terms of service, it talks about that outside of what would be your law enforcement type stuff. So if somebody did something illegal, that would be something different. But when they sign up, the terms of service are there, and I suppose, right? Big brother government agency, but we're here to do good. We're not here to do bad. And hopefully that they can use the companies that have signed up for within the last month to maybe get some we'll say some visibility into how good the service actually is.
Is it public knowledge, the companies that have already signed up? I know you said that the researchers can download the list, but if I were to go to the website, would I be able to see the companies that have agreed to participate?
We don't list the companies. I'm sure that it's probably fairly easy to pick that up based on the assets that are out there. But we don't advertise the companies unless for some reason that they explicitly want to be mentioned.
Okay. Well, this is amazing. Is there any part of the program that we haven't talked about that you think needs to be highlighted or you want to highlight?
No, I think that's it. I mean, once again, scope expansion and the pilot are two huge initiatives that we've been able to kick off this year. So 2021 is going to be a great year. Come September of 2022, all federal agencies must have all federal systems within scope of VDP. So there's a huge effort underway on the civilian side of the federal government under DHS CISA to do what we've done, and hopefully for your audience to know that we continue to advise and counsel them along the way. There's no reason that they need to reinvent the wheel. So we have some great lessons learned that we have shared with not just DHS CISA but many of their departments and agencies.
That's awesome. Do you have any knowledge of any other agencies besides CISA that have VDP already?
So there are very few. GSA has one in the federal government, and once again, technically they do have some form of VDP based on the Binding Operational Directive 2001. So that was the directive that they had to actually put out a policy on their website. So if everyone followed through, I'm sure that they did. Everyone has a VDP, just may only have like an asset in scope.
And one last question, just because I'm curious, if a researcher that has been, providing you guys good research came to you with a vulnerability from an agency that's not currently, doesn't currently have a VDP, would you guys be able to communicate that to that agency, or would you just tell them to stand down and don't exploit it?
Well, yeah, I mean, so we've had that, right? I mean, when you're the single front door for the Department of Defense, and once again, remember, a lot of the researchers are overseas. They couldn't tell you the difference between a Department of Treasury and a Department of Army, right? So we've had researchers that have come to us with their vulnerabilities. How we handle it is how I've said before in the past. If it's something that is for a company that's not participating, we tell them, thank you for submitting. Please don't do that. It's not, this agency does not participate in our program. And then we do pass off those vulnerabilities that they submit. It would be a shame if we just sat on them or just closed them. So we give them the agencies that we have great contacts with and let them know what the researcher found, but then let the researcher know that if please stay within the policy, and we want to do good by you, so don't violate it.
All right, so September 2022, all federal agencies will have a VDP. So that sounds exciting. Do you know if there will be if researchers will have to apply and get accepted into each one of the VDPs, or will there be some sort of common process and then being able to disclose to multiple agencies? And I know this is like cart horse, but just totally curious how this might work.
So I'll just refer you to DHS CISA. Their policy is in Binding Operational Directive 2001. Every agency's left to their own to decide how they want to handle the VDPs. We're once again as their sister agency. We always partner in ways that we can, and as a federal cyber center, we're here to share our lessons learned. So however they deem to set them up, we're here to help.
All right. Well, this is awesome. Thank you, Chris, so much for your time. Yeah. And I've learned a whole bunch. I wish I were a hacker because I would go out and do this in my free time, but alas, I am not. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Leslie. Appreciate it.